This is the entire history of bowlers who've taken seam wickets over the age of 40 in Test match cricket. It's a wild ride. Johnny Douglas is famous for being really fit, like abnormally so for a cricketer. And he was an all-rounder who in first-class cricket took 1,893 wickets. Sadly, his story ends with him trying to save his own father's life. Tom Emmett was one of the first left-arm pace bowlers, except that when he got older, he actually went to the dark side and became a spinner. So I'm not even sure he should be on this list. But we mention him because he invented a delivery called the Sostenuta, which sounds awesome even though I have no idea what it means. Hines Johnson was a fast bowler from the West Indies. He only ever played 28 first-class matches. But at the age of 37, he was the first quick from the Caribbean to take 10 wickets in a match. They've had a couple of players do that since. And he played one test just a few days after turning 40 years old. Les Jackson played some tests in his 30s, and then he got an emergency replacement call when he passed 40. Without that injury, he would not be on this list. George Geary was a swing and seam stock bowler who liked to bowl all day if someone allowed him to. In fact, in 1929, he took 5 for 105 from 81 overs in a single innings. After turning 40, he took 4 test wickets. One of them was Don Bradman. Dave Norse was a batter really, but he bowled a little bit of part-time seed and he was handy enough at it. Gubby Allen took the most wickets in the Bodyline series for England, but he actually refused to deliver bodyline bowling. 18 years after his debut, he played for England in the West Indies when he was in his 40s. Don't think they would have given the same treatment to the working class Harold Larwood. Tip Snook was a great all-rounder for the early South African teams. He made his first-class debut when he was 17, and he was still bowling seam deliveries in Test cricket into his 40s. And his final match, he took 3 for 17 and 2 for 41. You've got to tip your hat to him. Basil D'Oliveira was a batter with handy medium pace. He was listed as early 40s with his age, but perhaps was in his late 40s by the end of his career. He was also famous for slightly more things than this. Nigel Esme Haig was an all-rounder from Eton who was part of a weak England side to play in the West Indies. At the same time, they had another test series going on against New Zealand. Lala Amanat was a batter who basically ran Indian cricket for generations after once being sent home for a tour for fighting with a buffoon. He wasn't much of a bowler, but he actually once took out Hutton, Washbrook, Compton and Hammond with the new ball. He was a seam bowler who bowled off 3 paces and also off the wrong foot. And he did so in his 40s. Absolute legend. Oh, and Graham Gooch bowled seam, which will never not be funny to me. Him coming in like an eager club cricket bowler who almost runs faster than he bowls. Perfection. So as you can see, the story of seamers to take 40 wickets over the age of 40 is wild. And we haven't actually got to Jimmy Anderson yet. He bowled 40,000 deliveries in Test match cricket. And if we're up to him, he'd have probably gone for 50k. You might want to go on the attack against trolls of your favorite player. But to do that, you need a good defense. And we choose NordVPN. They are our protection against cyber cutters or when some board has geo-blocked a great clip. NordVPN will help you get through the straight bat of any rights restrictions so that you can watch all the cricket you want. Protect your computer like the fastest, nastiest, scariest bowler in the world is coming for it with NordVPN today. That's nordvpn.com/KIMBER. Go Nord today. There is an argument about Jimmy Anderson's greatness that I've been having since, 2011. It involves the Clouderson nickname and how his bowling average was never, that low. Not to mention being compared to Dale Steyn as well. But while Steyn's peaks were better, Anderson has 250 extra wickets. And it's easy to say that he was lucky to be in England when they were that professional and also just playing that many games. But you have to admit that there aren't many other bowlers with 700 wickets around. So let's say Anderson was right place, right time. But the ability to take as many wickets as he has for this long, that's kind of all him, right? And if you think you have seen him bowl a lot, let me put it this way. He has bowled 4% of all seam deliveries in tests since his debut. So for every 25 seam balls you see, one of them is from Jimmy Anderson. But we could take this further. Jimmy Anderson has bowled 40,000 deliveries since his debut in tests, while all the left arm wrist spinners combined in that same time period have 10,000 balls. Watching Test cricket over the last couple of decades, you see 4 balls from Jimmy Anderson for every 1 from a left arm wrist spinner. So Jimmy Anderson has outbowled an entire species of bowler. And just think about how many times he had to run in. I have it marked down as roughly 700 kilometers of running just up to the crease itself, which, as Henry Miranda showed, is, basically almost the entire UK. And what about when he started? Because Jimmy Anderson played his first test in May of 2003. The website MySpace was the first globally popular social media platform. It started in August of that year. How old is Jimmy Anderson? His career on its own is older than social media as we know it. The first chapter of Anderson was when England had a raw talent that they almost ruined by changing his action and basically breaking his back. But the other thing is, he was much better at white ball cricket when he started. Now that seems like an absolute lifetime ago now, but he could always swing the ball massively, but he wasn't always in complete control of how much it went. If anything, he was swinging the ball too far. But from 2008, he takes over as the main bowler in the attack as Matthew Hoggard and Steve Harmison are moved aside. And that's the period after where England become the #1 team in the world. But something more important happens around that stage. Jimmy Anderson discovers the wobble ball from Muhammad Asif and Stuart Clark. Then he goes on to learn everything he can about it. So even though he's now in his 30s and he should be wrapping up his career, he's actually better than he ever has been before. And you can see that Jimmy Anderson works this out in 2014. And it takes the world about 4 years to catch up to what he's doing. And all that actually means is that other bowlers start taking wickets. It doesn't mean that they go past Jimmy Anderson or anything. But that's because he had a hell of a head start. But also because he actually worked out how to capture this and then also train other bowlers with it. And when we're talking about age, we've obviously had a couple of other seamers who played on until they were old. Courtney Walsh is probably still playing first-class cricket somewhere as I speak. But the interesting thing about Anderson is that his peak was so late. These other bowlers mostly got great very early on in their careers. But the other thing here is you look at McGrath, Anderson, Walsh and Hadley, and you see that Anderson starts at a younger age and then finishes after them. But here's the big question. Do you know how hard it is to play into your 40s as a specialist seamer? We're not talking about all-rounders or batters who bowl a little bit or seamers who became spinners. But purely as a specialist seamer, that is incredibly tough. So let's take out all those other guys who were batters or all-rounders or became spinners. Let's just look at the specialist seam bowlers. This now suggests that Anderson took more than a third of the specialist seam wickets over the age of 40 in Test cricket ever. But there is one more player here I want to talk about. This is Sidney Barnes, who is probably the greatest bowler who ever played for England. Caveat, if you're only looking at bowling averages. And Barnes had other issues, like the fact that he didn't always play Test cricket, and he even refused to be involved in county cricket a lot. And because of that, he doesn't take that many wickets. And so not only are these two guys from completely two different generations, their records just don't look anything like each other. Anderson has 700 wickets. Barnes does not. And those who love numbers of wickets, or modern players, will always go with Anderson. People who love bowling averages more than anything else, obviously are going to go with Barnes. And it is worth remembering that Barnes played league cricket so that he didn't have to bowl every day of the week. And Anderson was withdrawn from ODIs and became a greater player. So I think the real trick here is if you want to be a 40-year-old bowler still doing it in test matches, don't do as much in your 30s. But the truth is that Anderson's sheer weight of wickets will keep him in any conversation ever. But there will always be someone questioning his average. However, there's one thing I do want to mention here. Barnes considered himself a spinner and not a seamer. So while we talk about him as a quick, he thought he was a tweaker. So if you take him out, there is no doubt that Anderson is the greatest seam bowling wicket taker of all time over the age of 40. He has almost 50% of the specialist seam bowling wickets. Now, where he fits in beyond that depends on your personal taste. Fred Truman took 300 wickets at, an average of 21. We don't really talk about him that much anymore. Dale Steyn was a great, but never got access to the professionalism or the matches that Anderson did. And you could name any one of the great West Indian seamers here as well. But when it comes to Anderson, you cannot deny the effort, skill, and most importantly, will that got Anderson this many wickets. That he survived running in for 40,000 test deliveries is mind-blowing. And that he thrived, that is almost incomprehensible. I have a book out with Abhishek Mukherjee, and it is called Overthrowing Cricket's Empire. And it's about the stories of how each team beat England for the first time. We go all the way back to the demon Fred Spofforth getting annoyed at W.G. Grace for acting a little bit like Alex Carey. And then we come all the way to present times with Rashid Khan's England's redemption. We cover every single team to beat England in a major international, but we also talk about the incredible stories, like the barefoot basher from Fiji that almost played for New Zealand. In fact, this book is full of tales like that, like how Pakistan lost a top batter after he was on the run from an angry husband of a movie star he was having an affair with, and also how one future captain of his nation realised he might have to go out and bat at Lords and that he didn't own his own pads. Cricket was used as a tool by the Empire, but what happens when those nations grow up and get good at it? Find Overthrowing Cricket's Empire on Amazon today.